There comes a moment in almost every person's life when silence is no longer enough. You've given your patience, your forgiveness, your energy until one day, something inside you quietly whispers, "No more." That whisper often comes after years of trying to love someone who only wanted control. A person who pulled you close, then pushed you away. Someone who demanded your devotion but never gave you safety in return. Maybe you've been there walking on eggshells, shrinking yourself just to keep the peace, all while hoping that maybe this time they would see you, hear you, love you the way you deserve. But what happens when the mask finally cracks? When the person who once seemed so powerful, so untouchable, can no longer hold everything together? That is where the breaking point begins. This is not just about them, it's about you. Because when control finally slips through their fingers, it reveals a truth you may have always suspected, but never dared to believe. The one who seemed to have all the power was actually the most fragile of all. And when that truth comes to light, something shifts inside you. You see the lies, the manipulation, the empty promises for what they really are. And you realize you are not powerless. You never were. The pain you've carried starts to loosen its grip. And suddenly the story is no longer just about survival, it's about reclaiming yourself. In the next few minutes, I want to take you into that moment, into the quiet collapse of a narcissist's control and the rise of the strength they never thought you had. If you've been through heartbreak, betrayal, or years of silencing yourself just to feel safe, then this is for you. Not as theory, not as advice, but as a reflection of what your soul already knows. You deserve more than crumbs. You deserve more than fear. And maybe, just maybe, you've always been stronger than the one who tried to convince you otherwise. If this resonates with you, stay with me. Let's walk through this story together. And if you've ever needed a space where your heart feels seen, where your pain is not dismissed but honored, you are welcome here. If you find something in these words that touches you, let it be a gentle reminder to take a deep breath, to rest your shoulders, and know you're not alone. And if you want to walk with me through more stories like this, I'd be grateful if you join this community by subscribing, liking this video, and sharing it with someone who may need these words tonight. Because sometimes healing begins not with answers, but with knowing someone else has walked through the fire too. Control has always been their oxygen. Without it, they cannot breathe. At first, you don't see it because their control is wrapped in charm, in confidence, in a way of making you feel like you've stepped into something extraordinary. You remember how it began, the intensity, the way they mirrored your dreams, the way they made you believe that you were finally understood. It felt intoxicating, didn't it? Like you had found something rare. But what you didn't know then is that this was the foundation of their power, pulling you in with light only so they could keep you tethered to their shadow. And so, the cycle began. They needed to be adored, worshipped, obeyed. They thrived on your confusion, your longing, your need to fix what always felt slightly broken. You started to give more of yourself, piece by piece, until one day you barely recognized who you were anymore. You were no longer living for your own heartbeat, but for their approval, and still it was never enough. No matter how much you bent, how much you silenced your own voice, how much you gave away, they demanded more. The hunger was endless, but here's the truth they never want you to see. Beneath that mask of superiority, they are terrified. Terrified of being exposed, terrified of losing control, terrified of the day you finally open your eyes and walk away. That fear is their breaking point, and every lie they tell, every manipulation they weave, every attempt to keep you small, it is all just an attempt to keep the mask from slipping. Because if it slips, even for a moment, you will see them as they really are. Not a giant, not invincible, not untouchable, but deeply fragile. You might remember a moment small, fleeting when you caught a glimpse of it. Maybe it was the way they overreacted to the smallest criticism, like their entire world was crumbling over a single word. Maybe it was the way their rage erupted not because of what you did, but because they feared losing their grip on you. Maybe it was the hollow look in their eyes after a fight, when the storm cleared and all that was left was emptiness. That was the truth peeking through the cracks. The truth they cannot stand. And when the cracks widen, when their control starts to fail, you start to feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Your own power. It comes quietly, like a soft voice inside you saying, "I don't have to live this way anymore." You begin to remember what it feels like to laugh without fear, to speak without trembling, to exist without permission. Their collapse becomes your awakening. Their breaking point becomes the doorway you never thought you'd have the strength to walk through. So take a breath here. Feel that shift in your body. Notice the weight that doesn't belong to you, the fear that was never yours to carry. The unraveling of their control is not the end of you, it is the beginning. There comes a day when the silence between you feels heavier than words. You've memorized their patterns, The sudden coldness, the sharp criticism that cuts a little too deep, the way they pull away just when you need closeness most. For so long, you tried to fix it. You believed that if you loved harder, if you stayed softer, if you became more patient, somehow they would change. But what you didn't realize was that every effort you made only fed their illusion of power. It was never about love. It was always about control. And yet, the very thing they fear most is the very thing they cannot stop, losing that control. You see, control is fragile. It is built on fear, not love. It requires constant maintenance, constant performance. And no one can keep that mask forever. The cracks appear in moments they cannot control when you stop reacting the way you used to, when you stop begging, when you stop explaining yourself. Your silence, the silence they once used against you, suddenly becomes your weapon, and they don't know what to do with it. That is when the unraveling begins. They lash out harder, louder, more desperately. They accuse you of changing, of betraying them, of not being the same person you were in the beginning. But the truth is, you haven't betrayed them, you've remembered yourself. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming who you were before you learned to shrink. That shift terrifies them, because without your submission, they are left with nothing but themselves. And deep down, they know it isn't enough. There is a moment, sometimes small, sometimes thunderous, when the tables turn. You no longer feel the need to argue. You no longer crave their approval. You look at them, perhaps during one of their rages, and you no longer see a god. You see a frightened child, screaming in a costume that no longer fits. And in that moment, something inside you clicks into place. You realize, I don't have to stay here. I don't have to keep bleeding just to prove my worth. I don't have to trade my peace for their chaos anymore. That realization is quiet but powerful. It doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes when you're washing dishes. Sometimes it comes in the middle of an argument, when instead of crying, you feel strangely calm. Sometimes it comes when you hear your own laugh after months of silence, and you think, oh, there I am. It's subtle, but it's the start of freedom. And that is when their control truly collapses, not because you fought harder, but because you stopped fighting at all. You stopped playing the game. You stopped feeding the illusion. And without your energy, without your attention, without your devotion, their power has nowhere to go. It shrivels. It dies. Take a breath here. Let yourself feel the truth of this. Their breaking point is not your destruction. It is your rebirth. The breaking point rarely looks dramatic from the outside. There is no grand explosion, no cinematic ending. More often, it happens in the smallest of ways. A sentence you don't answer. A door you quietly close. A decision to walk away from the conversation instead of being pulled into the storm. These tiny acts of defiance, ones that feel almost invisible, are what unravel everything they have built. For a person who survives on control, your refusal to be controlled is more terrifying than any confrontation. They sense it immediately. They notice the shift in your eyes, the calm in your tone, the steadiness in your breath. You are no longer begging to be understood. You are no longer performing for their approval. And suddenly, they are left scrambling, like a magician who has lost his trick in front of the crowd. That is when panic sets in. They accuse, they guilt trip. They turn the story upside down to make you doubt yourself again. And yet, for the first time, you don't fall into the trap. You watch their desperation, and instead of drowning in it, you begin to see it for what it is. Fear. Because underneath every mask of arrogance is a person terrified of abandonment. Underneath every demand for loyalty is someone who cannot bear the thought of being truly seen. And when you no longer bend to their will, you force them to face the one truth they've been running from. They were never in control to begin with. Control only worked as long as you believed in it. Once you stopped believing, once you saw through the illusion, the power vanished. But here's the part that matters most. This isn't just about their collapse, it's about your awakening. For so long, you've carried the weight of their moods, their needs, their storms. You've sacrificed your peace just to keep them calm. You've silenced your truth just to feel safe. And now, as their grip weakens, you begin to remember the sound of your own voice. You begin to notice the space in your chest where fear used to live. You begin to feel the warmth of your own presence returning. Freedom doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with tears, shaking hands, and the quiet terror of stepping into the unknown. But within that unknown lies something sacred. Yourself. The self you lost. The self you dimmed. The self that has been waiting patiently for you to return. Take a moment to breathe into that. Imagine yourself standing on the edge of a cliff, not about to fall, but about to fly. The ground beneath you is shaky, but your heart is steady. And for the first time in a long time, you realize you are no longer afraid of their storm. because you found your calm within it. What shakes them the most is not your anger, but your stillness. They were prepared for you to fight, to cry, to chase, to plead. Those reactions were familiar. They knew how to twist them, how to spin them into proof that you were the unstable one, that you were the one to blame. But when you fall silent in peace instead of fear, when you no longer react but simply see, the foundation of their control trembles. You've stepped out of the role they wrote for you, and without that role, their script no longer works. And here is the paradox. The very thing they once used against you, your softness, your empathy, your willingness to love despite the pain, becomes your strength. Because while they are unraveling, trying desperately to keep the illusion alive, you are learning to breathe again. You are reclaiming the parts of you that they tried to convince you were weaknesses. Your sensitivity is no longer a weapon in their hands. It is a compass back to yourself. In these moments, you begin to see the pattern more clearly than ever. You remember the first time they made you feel small, the first time they questioned your worth, the first time you silenced your truth just to avoid conflict. And for a moment, grief washes over you. Grief for the years lost. Grief for the version of yourself who believed that love required this kind of suffering. Grief for the silence you carried like armor. Let yourself feel that grief. It is not weakness, it is healing, because only when you honor the pain can you release it. And then, as if from nowhere, a strange calm takes its place. You realize that you no longer need them to understand you. You no longer need them to apologize. You no longer need them to validate your experience. The closure you once begged for begins to grow inside you, not because they gave it, but because you finally gave it to yourself. That is the moment their control truly shatters. When you stop waiting for them to change, when you stop bargaining with their potential, when you stop sacrificing yourself for a love that was never love at all. Their breaking point is loud, chaotic, desperate. Yours is quiet, steady, unshakable. And though it may not feel like victory at first, trust me, it is. Because the power they once held over you no longer exists. You've outgrown the cage they built. So pause here. Breathe into this truth. The end of their control is not the end of you. It is the beginning of everything you were always meant to be. The collapse doesn't always happen with a single event. It happens little by little, like water carving its way through stone. Each time you choose silence instead of defending yourself, each time you walk away instead of engaging in their storm, each time you remember that your worth does not hang on their approval, the stone weakens, and eventually, it cracks. When control finally slips through their hands, you see their fear surface in ways you could not have imagined before. They may rage louder, reaching for words that once left you trembling. Only now those words fall flat. They may turn on the charm, promising change, swearing they'll do better, reminding you of the version of themselves you fell for in the beginning. But you've lived this cycle too many times to mistake it for truth. What once hooked you now feels hollow. Their magic is gone, not because it disappeared, but because you no longer need to believe in it. And here's the part that catches you off guard. You don't hate them. You don't even feel the fire you thought you would. What you feel instead is something quieter, maybe sadness, maybe relief, maybe a strange emptiness. Because you realize that all along, you were trying to save someone who was never ready to be saved. You poured your love into a bottomless well, believing that if you gave enough, it would one day be enough. But it never was. Not because you were lacking, but because their hunger was endless. This is where many falter, thinking they must stay angry to stay strong. But true strength doesn't always come from rage. Sometimes it comes from clarity, from the simple knowing that you cannot go back, that you will not abandon yourself again, that you no longer belong in a story that keeps breaking you. Strength is when you stop needing them to be the villain, and instead, you simply walk away. Their breaking point is also a mirror. When you see their desperation, you are reminded of the times you once felt the same, afraid of being left, afraid of being unseen, afraid of being unworthy. And in that reflection, you find compassion not for their actions, but for yourself, for the version of you that stayed when it hurt, that loved even when it was one-sided, that believed even when it cost everything. That compassion is what begins to set you free. And freedom is not loud. It is not about proving a point or winning a war. It is about coming home to yourself after years of exile. It is about choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over desperation, truth over illusion. It is about walking away not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. So pause here. Place a hand on your heart if you need to. Breathe deeply into the space where fear once lived. Can you feel it? The quiet strength that was always there, waiting for you to remember. That is yours now. That is your beginning. What unsettles them most is not losing you. It's losing the control they thought they had over you. You see it in their eyes, in the way their voice sharpens, in the way they scramble to rewrite the story. They will tell you that you are cold, ungrateful, disloyal. They will remind you of all they've done for you, all the ways they believe you owe them. And once upon a time, you would have believed it. You would have bent under the weight of their words, apologizing for things that were never yours to carry. But now, their accusations sound like echoes in an empty room. You hear them, but they no longer define you. And in that space of clarity, you begin to notice something new, your own boundaries. Boundaries you once thought were impossible, dangerous even, now feel like lifelines. Saying no doesn't feel selfish anymore. It feels like survival. Walking away from their chaos doesn't feel like abandonment. It feels like freedom. Each boundary you set is another thread cut from the web they spun around you, and with each cut, you breathe more easily. Of course, they don't take this lightly. They will test you, push you, try to pull you back into the old dance. They may even beg, presenting a softer side, showing you glimpses of the person they once pretended to be. But you know now it isn't real. It never was. And though part of you aches for the fantasy you once believed in, a stronger part of you knows the truth. You deserve more than a cycle of promises and pain. This is where the grief deepens, because even as you gain strength, you feel the weight of letting go. You grieve the love you wanted, but never received. You grieve the years lost to confusion, to self-doubt, to fighting for someone who never fought for you. That grief is heavy, but it is also holy. It is the price of reclaiming yourself. Do not rush it. Do not silence it. Grieve, because grief is proof that you loved, and proof that you are still alive enough to love again differently, more truthfully, more safely. And as you grieve, something remarkable happens. You start to see beauty in the simplest places again, the way light falls across your floor in the morning, the sound of your own laughter, the peace in a quiet evening with no storm hanging over you. These moments may seem small, but they are everything. They are the signs that you are returning home to yourself. Their breaking point is chaos. Yours is peace. And though the journey feels raw and uneven, every step forward is a declaration. I am no longer under their control. I am no longer defined by their story. I am free. Take a breath here. Let your chest rise with the truth of it. You are not losing anything that was ever truly yours. You are finding everything you thought you'd lost. The strangest part of freedom is how unfamiliar it feels at first. After years of walking on eggshells, you almost miss the sound of them cracking. After years of being measured by someone else's moods, the quiet feels suspicious, even dangerous. You ask yourself, is this real? Am I allowed to feel this light? That's the residue of their control making you doubt peace because you were trained to survive in chaos. But let me tell you something important. Peace is not a trap. Peace is your natural state, the place you were always meant to return to. You begin to notice how your body changes. The tension in your shoulders slowly releases. Your breath deepens without you forcing it. Your smile returns, not because you found someone new, but because you found yourself again. And in that rediscovery, you realize something profound. You are not broken. You never were. What was broken was the love you were given, the promises you were fed, the way you were treated. But you, your essence, your worth, your spirit remain whole. This is the part they never wanted you to see. Because if you saw your own wholeness, if you realized that you were never dependent on their approval, their entire illusion would collapse. And it has. That is why they fought so hard to keep you in the dark, to keep you doubting yourself, to keep you chained to their chaos. But now the chains are gone. You've stepped into the light. And though your eyes may sting at first, they will adjust. They will learn to see the world clearly again. And yes, there will be moments of temptation. Nights when the loneliness aches, when the memory of their arms still lingers, when you wonder if maybe, just maybe, they could change. But then you remember the cost. You remember the sleepless nights, the tears you swallowed, the self you abandoned, just to keep them calm. And you know deep down, going back would mean betraying yourself again. And you've already walked too far to ever go back. In time, you'll notice how your heart softens again, not toward them, but toward life itself. You'll feel joy in places you thought were lost to you. You'll trust your own voice more, even when it shakes. You'll set boundaries without apology, not because you've hardened, but because you've healed. And slowly, gently, you will realize that the love you were starving for was never theirs to give. It was yours to claim all along. So pause here. Breathe into that truth. You are not defined by their breaking point. You are defined by your rising. And though it may feel unfamiliar now, this freedom is yours to keep. There comes a quiet morning when you realize you no longer wake up bracing yourself. For so long, mornings were heavy, the dread of what mood they'd be in, the weight of wondering what you'd have to sacrifice just to keep the day calm. But now, there is space. You pour your coffee, you watch the sky shift colors, and you feel something almost foreign. Safety. Not because anyone gave it to you, but because you stopped letting someone else steal it. This is the hidden gift of their breaking point. While they are unraveling, clawing to maintain control, you are stitching yourself back together. Every small act, cooking a meal just for yourself, saying no without apology, laughing freely without fear, becomes a declaration that you are alive beyond their shadow. They wanted you to believe that without them, you would be nothing. But now you see the truth. Without them, you are finally everything. And yet, healing isn't a straight line. There are nights when the past sneaks in, whispering old lies into your ear. Memories of the good moments, the charm, the promises they surface. And for a moment, you almost forget the cost. You almost forget the pain that wrapped itself around every illusion. In those moments, you may feel weak. But listen closely, you are not weak. You are human. You are remembering. And each time you choose truth over illusion, you strengthen the muscle of freedom. The narcissist's breaking point is not just about them losing control, it's about you reclaiming it. It's about realizing that your story doesn't end in their chaos. It begins in your clarity. The greatest revenge, if you even want to call it that, is not anger, not bitterness, but peace. The peace of moving forward. The peace of no longer explaining yourself. The peace of being free enough to love again, this time without chains, and one day, you will. Love will find you again, not the kind that burns you alive, but the kind that warms you gently. The kind that feels safe, steady, true. You may hesitate at first, your heart cautious, your steps unsure. But when it comes, you'll recognize it. Because real love doesn't demand you shrink. Real love doesn't punish your truth. Real love feels like home, not exile. Until then, let this moment be enough. Let the sound of your own laughter be enough. Let the feeling of peace in your chest be enough. Let the knowledge that you survived, that you rose, that you reclaimed yourself be enough. Because it is. Because you are. Take one more breath here. Feel the steadiness in your body. The story is not about their fall, it's about your rise. And this, right here, is only the beginning. There is a strange beauty in watching the pieces fall apart. Not because you wished them harm, but because their collapse revealed a truth you could not see while you were inside it. You once thought they were unshakable, larger than life, holding all the cards. But as the control slipped away, what was left wasn't power at all, it was fragility. And that fragility no longer holds you captive. Think back to the first time you truly saw it, the trembling under their rage, the hollowness in their eyes after the fight, the desperate way they clung to the mask. That was the moment you began to understand. Their dominance was never strength. It was fear wearing armor. And when you stopped feeding that fear with your obedience, the armor cracked. This is where your healing deepens. Because you realize that the person who tried to convince you of your weakness was the one most afraid of their own. You realize that the control you thought they had was only ever borrowed from your belief, your love, your energy. And once you reclaimed those things, the illusion shattered. The throne they sat on turned to dust. And in the dust, something beautiful rises. Your own life. A life no longer built on keeping the peace with someone who thrived on war. A life where your laughter doesn't echo against walls of silence but fills open air. A life where you no longer confuse chaos with passion or survival with love. Slowly, gently, you begin to dream again dreams that belong only to you. This is where freedom reveals itself not just as release, but as creation. You start to rebuild, not as who you were before them, but as who you've become after surviving them. Stronger, softer, wiser, more alive. You are not defined by the years lost, you are defined by the strength it took to rise again. And maybe, just maybe, you'll look back one day not with bitterness, but with gratitude for yourself. Gratitude that you endured, that you learned, that you finally chose yourself. Their breaking point was inevitable. But your rising? That was a choice. A choice you made each time you refused to go back. Each time you honored your truth. Each time you decided that peace was worth more than illusion. So breathe in this truth now. You are free. Free in ways you couldn't have imagined when you were living in their shadow. And that freedom is not fragile. It is steady, unshakable, yours to keep. The further you walk away from their grasp, the more clearly you see the shape of their collapse. They may rage louder now, desperate to drag you back into the old patterns. They may try to guilt you, whispering about loyalty, about love, about how no one else will ever understand you the way they did. They may even crumble into tears, begging for another chance, promising this time will be different. But you know better now. You've lived through too many cycles, felt the sting of too many broken promises. Their breaking point is not a moment of transformation. It is a moment of exposure. The mask is gone, and what's left cannot hold you anymore. And in that exposure, you find your strength. Not the kind of strength that shouts or proves, but the quiet strength of simply not returning. That is where your power lies. In walking away without needing to justify, without needing to fight, without needing them to finally admit the truth. You know what happened. Your body remembers. Your heart remembers. And that memory is enough to guide you forward. What surprises you is how your world slowly begins to expand again. The things you once gave up in order to keep them calm, your friendships, your hobbies, your laughter begin to return to you like old companions. At first, it feels strange, almost undeserved, to live without fear. But with each passing day, you realize this is what life was always supposed to feel like. Love was never meant to be a battlefield. Connection was never meant to cost you yourself. And then comes forgiveness, not for them, but for you. For the times you stayed too long. For the times you doubted yourself. For the times you thought love meant losing yourself. You forgive that version of you because you see her now not as weak, but as someone doing her best to survive. And survival is never shameful. It is proof of your courage. This is the gift hidden inside their collapse. The chance to come back to yourself. To rebuild your life with gentleness, with truth, with boundaries that keep your heart safe. To learn that love doesn't demand you bleed. That safety doesn't mean silence. That freedom doesn't mean loneliness. And as you step into this new chapter, you begin to notice that the fear that once held you back no longer has the same power. Their breaking point has become your turning point. Their loss of control has become your return to wholeness. And while they may continue spinning in their storms, you've found your calm. And nothing they do can take that from you again. Pause here. Breathe into your own chest. Feel the steady rhythm of your heart reminding you. You are free. You are whole. You are home. There comes a moment when you realize the story is no longer about them at all. For so long, every thought circled around their moods, their silence, their anger, their approval. You measured your worth against the way they looked at you, the words they chose, the doors they closed. But now, the focus shifts. It is no longer about how they see you, it is about how you see yourself. And in that shift, everything changes. You begin to notice the small freedoms first. The way your laughter no longer feels forced. The way your body feels lighter when you walk into your own space, knowing no storm is waiting for you there. The way you speak your truth without rehearsing it, without bracing for punishment. These moments may feel fragile at first, but they are proof of your return, proof that you are building a life that belongs to you. They, on the other hand, remain stuck in their cycle, desperate to find someone else to mirror them, to feed their endless hunger for control. You might even watch from a distance as they repeat the same patterns with someone new. And for a moment, it stirs something in you: anger, pity, maybe even guilt. But then you remember, it is not your job to heal them. It was never your job to carry their emptiness. You were not put here to be a mirror for someone else's survival. You were put here to live your own truth. And your truth is this: you are stronger than what tried to break you. You are softer than the world wanted you to be. And you are wiser than the illusions you once believed. That combination, strength, softness, wisdom, is what will carry you forward. It is what will protect you without hardening you. It is what will allow you to love again without losing yourself. The narcissist's breaking point is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new one where you choose yourself again and again. One where your heart is no longer a battlefield but a sanctuary. One where your worth is not measured by what you give away, but by the fact that you exist at all. So take another breath here. Let it sink in. You are no longer in their shadow. You are standing in your own light. And that light is enough to guide you into everything you were always meant to become. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the scars begin to feel less like open wounds and more like marks of survival. You touch the parts of yourself that once ached with self-doubt and realize they are steadier now. The voice that once whispered, "You're not enough," grows quieter, replaced by a softer truth. You always were. And in that truth, you find peace, not the fragile peace that depends on keeping someone else satisfied, but the kind of peace that cannot be taken from you. The narcissist's breaking point may have been chaotic, but your healing unfolds differently. It comes with gentleness, with moments of silence that are no longer threatening, with choices that affirm your worth instead of erasing it. You begin to see yourself as more than what you endured. You are not just the person who survived manipulation. You are the person who learned to rise beyond it. And perhaps when you least expect it, you'll notice how the world feels alive again. Music moves you. Sunlight feels like a gift. Conversations feel safe. Your laughter feels real. These are not small things. They are signs that life has returned to you. Signs that you are no longer a character in someone else's performance, but the author of your own story. As you walk further into this new chapter, You realize the power was never truly theirs, it was borrowed. Borrowed from your devotion, your love, your willingness to sacrifice. And now that you've reclaimed those things, there is nothing left for them to hold. That is why their control collapsed. That is why their breaking point became inevitable. And though the memories may linger, they no longer have the same hold. You can think of them without the same sharp pain. You can look back and honor the person you once were, the one who stayed, who hoped, who tried. Not with shame, but with compassion. Because that version of you was not weak. That version of you was brave enough to love, even in impossible circumstances. And now, you are brave enough to love yourself enough to leave. This is what they never saw coming, that their attempt to break you would only lead you back to your own strength, that their unraveling would be your awakening, that the end of their control would be the beginning of your freedom. So breathe in deeply now. Let the air fill your lungs like a promise that you are no longer bound to their storm, a promise that your life belongs to you again, a promise that the best is not behind you, it is waiting ahead. There will be nights when the past still knocks at your door. A memory, a scent, a song, it pulls you back for a moment, and you feel the ache as if no time has passed. Don't mistake this for weakness. It is not a sign that you're slipping back. It is simply your body remembering, and memory takes time to soften. The difference now is that you don't stay there. You visit the ache, and then you let it go. That is the mark of healing. Not that the pain never returns, but that it no longer owns you. Meanwhile, they are still spinning in circles, still clinging to illusions, still searching for control in every new face they encounter. And for the first time, you can see it without wanting to save them, without feeling guilty for leaving. You understand now it was never your job to heal their wounds. It was only ever your job to honor your own. And in doing so, you've broken the cycle. This realization doesn't just change how you see them. It changes how you see yourself. You begin to honor the quiet resilience that carried you through the worst nights. You begin to trust the intuition that told you something was wrong long before you admitted it. You begin to recognize that the love you gave, even when it was misused, was not wasted. It was evidence of your capacity to feel deeply. That depth is still yours, and one day, it will flow towards someone who can hold it with care. And that is the real beauty. Their breaking point doesn't just mark the end of control, it marks the beginning of possibility. You are no longer trapped in their endless cycle of highs and lows. You are free to dream again, free to imagine love that doesn't demand sacrifice, connection that doesn't cost your soul, joy that doesn't require apology. You start to see that life is not something happening to you anymore. It's something you're creating. Every boundary you set, every truth you speak, every moment you choose peace over chaos. You are laying bricks for a future that belongs entirely to you. And with each brick, the distance between you and their shadow grows. So let yourself pause here. Feel the distance you've created. Look back, not with longing, but with gratitude for surviving, for learning, for finally choosing yourself. And then look forward into the open space of what's next. This is the part of the story where anything is possible. You may not notice it at first, but there comes a day when you catch yourself smiling for no reason. Not because someone else gave you permission to feel joy, not because you're performing to keep the peace, but because you are simply alive and breathing and free. That moment feels almost strange, like wearing clothes that don't quite fit yet. But it's real, it's yours, and it will grow. The narcissist's breaking point has long passed, but what lingers is the transformation it sparked within you. You've seen what happens when control fails, when the mask crumbles, when the storm loses its grip. And now you understand something they never will. Real power isn't found in control, it's found in freedom. In the freedom to love without fear, to speak without trembling, to live without constantly shrinking yourself. There's a tenderness that returns to you too. For a while, you may have felt hardened, cautious, afraid of trusting again. But slowly, the walls you built out of survival begin to soften, not in a way that makes you vulnerable to harm, but in a way that makes you open to life again. You learn that vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. When paired with wisdom, you can open your heart again, not because you've forgotten the past, but because you've grown from it. And here's the truth that sets you free. Their collapse was never really about you. Their breaking point was the consequence of their own illusions, their own hunger, their own emptiness. What matters is what you did with it. You turned their chaos into clarity. You turned their collapse into your rising. You took the ashes of what was and built something they could never destroy, your own self-worth. One day, someone may look at you and see only your light, not knowing the storms you survived to carry it. They won't see the nights you cried in silence, the times you questioned your own sanity, the way you lost yourself trying to hold on to someone else. But you will know, you will remember, and that memory will make your light all the more powerful, all the more sacred. So as you stand here, further than you ever thought you'd get, know this. You are not defined by what broke you. You are defined by the way you pieced yourself back together. You are defined by the softness you still carry despite it all. You are defined by the freedom you chose, again and again. Breathe into that truth now. Let it fill you. Because this is not just survival. This is your rebirth. There will always be a part of your story that carries their shadow, but that shadow no longer defines you. It is simply a reminder, a shape in the distance, proof of where you've walked and what you've overcome. You don't have to erase it. You don't have to pretend it never happened. You only have to remember that it no longer has power here, in this present moment, where you stand in your own light. And that light, fragile at first, grows stronger each day you choose it. Every time you speak your truth without apology, every time you refuse to shrink, every time you honor your needs instead of abandoning them, you strengthen that light. Until one day, you realize the shadow has grown small, and the brightness of your own life is all you see. This is the gift of their breaking point. It gave you back to yourself. You, who once doubted your worth, now hold it in your hands. You, who once silenced your voice, now speak with clarity. You, who once confused love with survival, now know the difference. And in knowing, you will never return to the cage you escaped. There may still be echoes, familiar patterns that tempt you, voices that sound like theirs, moments when your heart skips with old fears. But those echoes are not chains. They cannot hold you anymore. Because now, you know. You know what real love is meant to feel like. You know what peace tastes like. You know that your life belongs to you, and no one else has the right to rewrite your story. And maybe that is the ultimate triumph. Not proving them wrong, not exposing them to the world, not waiting for the apology that will never come. The triumph is quieter, gentler. It is in your freedom, in your joy, in the life you build beyond them. That is the victory they can never touch. So take one last breath with me. Inhale deeply. Let it fill every corner of you. Exhale slowly, letting go of the last remnants of their grip. Feel your feet on the ground, your body steady, your heart open. This is you now whole, free, alive. Thank you for walking through this story with me, for allowing these words to hold space for your healing. If something here resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own strength, I invite you to carry it with you. And if you wish to walk alongside me through more journeys like this, I'd be grateful if you subscribed, shared this with someone who needs it, or left a reflection below. Not because you owe it, but because your story matters too. Your light is not small. Your story is not over. This is your beginning.